Hello, my dear friends. You're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 5th of January. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And the most important update is that the President of Russian Federation, Putin, announced about ceasefire starting from 6th of January till 7th of January. And this is very important, so let's discuss this ceasefire in more details. First of all, let's remind you how did that happen. And yesterday in the evening, or maybe in this morning, the head of Russian church, the Orthodox Church, asked Putin to start or to make ceasefire period during the Orthodox Christmas period. And when talking about the Ukrainians, as soon as they received this request, because this was some kind of public request from the head of Russian church, and you need to understand that even a few years ago, the head of Russian church, Orthodox Church, was the head of Ukrainian church as well. So he's a very important person. And during the last years, the Ukrainians decided to split these two churches. So this person is very important anyway, till today. And the Ukrainian authorities, as soon as they heard about this request, they started saying that all this request is some kind of provocation from the Russian side. And the Ukrainian authorities were saying that the Russians were not planning to stop a war or stop any offensive operation or stop any fire and something like this. The Ukrainians were saying that that was a provocation, that the Russians want to use this time to regroup forces, to bring more manpower and so on. Later, during today, we received another interesting update from the Russians. They were saying that there were a call between the head of Turkey, Erdogan, and the head of Russian Federation, Putin. They were discussing something. But after that discussion, the Russians reported that the president, the head of Turkey, asked Putin to make a ceasefire as well from the Russian side. And the most important thing that the head of Turkey asked Putin was that if the Ukrainians weren't planning to start any ceasefire period from their side, no matter the situation, the Russians should start ceasefire from their side. So he asked Putin to make a ceasefire even if the Ukrainians would continue attacking, shelling, or any offensive operation on the territory of ex-Ukraine or on the territory of that is under Russian control. And this is very important, and you need to understand one important thing, that this is a game. Of course, this is a very interesting game. And if you ask me, I'll give you my opinion that Erdogan asked Putin to start ceasefire not because of Erdogan wanted this ceasefire. I believe that the Russians told Erdogan about upcoming ceasefire period, and they asked him, or they gave him an opportunity to ask Putin about this ceasefire, because they were planning to do this. And from this moment we understand that Erdogan gained another political points, because from this moment Erdogan is the only Western leader who asked Putin about ceasefire, and after his request the Russians announced about the ceasefire. But I believe that it was like a real combination. Everything was like an agreement between these two parties and so on. But by the time I started recording this video, the Ukrainians still haven't confirmed or gave any update or any confirmation about ceasefire from their period of time. And I'll give another, my opinion is that, as I understand, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is a complete speculation from my side, but I believe that the Russians are ready. If you have possibility to take a look at the weather map, you're gonna see that tomorrow, entire Ukraine will go below zero on Celsius. There are going to be minus all over the Ukraine. And this is the best time, the best opportunity to start offensive operation. And I believe that this ceasefire from the Russian side is some kind of silent before storm. The Russians completely ready. And of course, they understand that if Ukrainians are not going to accept this silence period, That means that after the Orthodox Christmas, the Russians will have at least some reason to start a great offensive operation all over the border. So if you ask me, if I was the Ukrainian authorities, I would accept this ceasefire period, because at least I would do everything I can, but not to give the Russians any opportunities to to have a very good looking in front of Western countries. Because from now on, everybody in the world understand that the Russians stopped this war. They haven't stopped this war completely, but they have stopped this war at least for 2 days. And if the Ukrainians are going to break this ceasefire period, that means that from this moment, the Ukrainians is going to be the only country, the only people who wants this war and who wants to fight, and during the Christmas period of time. So this is a very interesting game. This is a very difficult game. And of course, I believe that in the morning on the 8th of January, we're going to understand who is the winner of this game. I'll repeat one more time, and don't forget about the fact that the Minister of Defense of Ukraine and the head of Ukrainian intelligence just a few days ago reported that today, on the 5th of January, the Russians are going to start mobilization, the global mobilization. And according to the situation we see right now, by the 7 p.m. of local time, we see that the Russians haven't started any mobilization at all. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to do this, because they have their own sources, they have their own information about this situation. And all this situation with ceasefire, with the silence mode before the big freezes, before this weather situation in Ukraine, this is a perfect situation to start the greatest offensive operation from the Russian side. Of course, we'll see, and I believe that soon we are going to understand. And another important thing you need to understand about the ceasefire period. Most of the Russian military experts confirms and agree, and I completely agree with them, that there is going to be no ceasefire on the front line. Believe me, it's impossible, at least these days, to force the Russian forces in Bakhmut, Wagner's in Bakhmut, the Russian forces in Solidar to stop attacking, to stop fightings with the Ukrainians. It's impossible. Furthermore, it's impossible from the Ukrainian side to do the same, to force the Ukrainian forces all over the front line not to attack the Russians, not to bomb Donetsk. It's impossible. It's not even highly unlikely. It's impossible to do this. Anyway, there are going to be clashes. Anyway, there are going to be very heavy clashes all over the front line. But even though in this situation the Russians did a very smart trick, they are not planning to start any ceasefire because they understand it's impossible. But they announced about the ceasefire period, and now they're completely free in this situation, and they can blame the Ukrainians if the Ukrainians are not going to announce about the same situation. Even one shelling of the territory of Russian Federation, and the Russians will be able to blame the Ukrainians in the breaking of the ceasefire situation. They will be able to blame the Ukrainians that they break the ceasefire period, the ceasefire regime during the Orthodox Christmas. And this is going to be a very powerful strike against Zelensky, because Ukraine is Orthodox country. The people in this territory are very sick and tired of this conflict anyway. They hate the Russians, we understand this. A lot of people hate. But anyway, everybody wants, and everybody understands that sooner or later this war is going to be completed by the Russians and the Ukrainians. And the people from this territory want just one thing. They want their friends, their brothers, their sisters, their fathers not to die on the front line, or at least not to die during the Christmas Eve, during the Christmas holidays. And this is very important, just from the local understanding of this situation from every single people on the territory of Ukraine, and from the Russian side as well. And of course, who break this ceasefire period will become an enemy for every single family, for every single person of the territory of Ukraine. Let's say imagine a situation if Zelensky during today don't confirm this ceasefire period, and yesterday if there is some kind of provocation all over the front line, let's say the Ukrainians started shelling Donetsk, and everybody in Ukraine will understand that it's Ukraine who didn't. It's Ukraine who haven't confirmed this ceasefire. It's Ukraine who bring deaths and many other terrible things during the Christmas Eve. Very important thing, very interesting situation. Erdogan gained another political points during this situation in eyes of every single political person all over the world. Of course, Putin earned a lot of points in this situation in the eyes of Western countries about this ceasefire. And when we're talking about Zelensky, I'm not sure if he's going to announce about ceasefire, but I understand that later or today there was a call, also conversation between Zelensky and Erdogan. I don't know the details about their talk. I believe that Erdogan asked Zelensky about the same, but who knows if Zelensky are able or can do the same as the Russians. I don't know. But anyway, this is exactly the point when everything is going to change. This ceasefire is a very big and very smart trap. Of course, it's not very easy to think about this, like during the Christmas Eve. It's like a Christmas Eve, and first of all, we need to think about this as a very big holiday for the people in on these territories. But from the other side, I understand that this is a very big trap, and that the Russians are ready to start their offensive operation. I believe, and I'm 400% sure that, not like 400, but 99% sure that this ceasefire will be broken by the Ukrainians, and this is going to be this thing and the case that the Russians will use to start another offensive operation. Anyway, we'll see. Tomorrow we will understand everything. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. The front lines are completely stable, and furthermore, the Russian Ministry of Defense today they gave us another report, and the losses from the Ukrainian side during the day was very low. When talking about Kupiansk front line, the Russians attacked the Ukrainians in the town like Pishane. They were attacking the 95th Brigade, and they were attacking the Ukrainians in the area of Stelimakhovka, in the area of Kuchorovka. They were attacking the 14th Mechanized Brigade, and the losses of the Ukrainians on this front line were around 30 soldiers and something, around 6 armored vehicles. So as you can see, not much, but when talking about Kupiansk, we haven't seen big losses maybe for many weeks on this front line. When talking about Liman, the situation is the same. The Ukrainians lost just 40 soldiers and something around 5 armored vehicles. Mainly the Russians were attacking the Ukrainians using artillery in the towns like Serebryanka and Grigorievka. This is the main bridgehead of Ukrainians that they're using to cross Seversky Donetsk and to send their commandos and scouts in these forests with the purpose to attack Kremina from the south. So the Ukraine just lost 40 soldiers, not much, and just 5 armored vehicles. So as you can see, it's just irregular. There were no updates about any commandos or scouts that were destroyed and spotted by the Russians in this area as well. When talking about Bakhmut and Solidar area, the Russians updated this map. They reported that the Russians managed to establish control over the forest in the east part of Bakhmut, that they got as close as possible to the residential area that located in the east part of Bakhmut, but without any real progress. The same situation in the area between Krasnogora and Solidar. Today, during the day, we received a report that the Russians made a few attempts of storming Krasnogora already. So the Russians, we can say that in front of this town, but also without any progress from the Russian side. When talking about Donetsk area, the Russians reported that the losses of Ukrainians during the day were around 60 soldiers and just 9 armored vehicles. So as you can see, the losses from the Ukrainian side are not so high. So we can say, or the Russians make some kind of interesting update about all this situation before the Christmas, Orthodox Christmas Eve, trying to show the picture that they reduced the activity before these holidays, before this big holiday. I don't know. When talking about Donetsk, as you can see, Donetsk is still under heavy fire. The Russians continue their effective artillery duels in this area. During the day, the Russians destroyed a lot of artillery systems. They shut down at least 2 aircrafts in the area of Marinka and Krasnogorovka. The Russians destroyed during the day a lot of artillery systems, one Grad system, two Alha system, three howitzers, Gvozdika and Akatsi, another howitzers D20, D30, one M777 artillery system, but without any movements on the ground, as you can see. When talking about Zaporozhye area, the Russians reported that the losses of Ukrainians on this front line, on the south of Donetsk and Zaporozhye, were just 40 soldiers and something around 5 armored vehicles. So as you can see, not much. The Russians were concentrated on attacking the warehouses near Gulay Polye, were concentrated in attacks against the artillery systems and without any movements on the ground as well. When talking about Kherson area, the same situation. The Russians attacked the Ukrainian artillery positions in the river in Gulets and near Berislav, in this small town Novoberislav. Furthermore, there are a lot of talks about these islands between Kherson district. The Russians reported that they control the villages. As you can see, there are villages, small buildings on this part of islands that located on the Dnipro River between Kherson area and the Russians territory. So the Ukrainians control the north part, the Russians control the south part, but also without any progress and so on. Today we got very interesting updates from the territory of Belarus. Today the officers of Belarusian army on the border reported about some number of Ukrainian provocations on the border, but also without any casualties, without any victims. But anyway, all these things are related with the ceasefire that the Russians announced and many other things. So tomorrow we'll see what is going to be tomorrow, but anyway, no matter what the Russians are planning to do, no matter what Ukrainians are planning to do, I believe and I hope that tomorrow we are going to see a real ceasefire, and maybe after this ceasefire, the parties and the soldiers on the ground, as soon as they understand the value of ceasefire, the value of peace sky, the value of not being shelled and attacked by howitzers or mortars from their enemy, the value of the day when they haven't lost anyone from their group, from their squad, or from their brigade and so on, I believe they will understand the value of this, and I hope that on the 8th of January we won't see any greatest offensive operation from the Russian side, and I hope that we're going to see that this ceasefire period won't be stopped by the morning of the 8th of January, and I hope that after this Christmas Eve, tomorrow's the parties are going to sign some peace agreement, because tomorrow is a Christmas time, and the Christmas time is the best time for miracles, and it's Orthodox Christmas, but anyway, most of the population in these territories are Orthodox, so that's why I believe that maybe tomorrow we're going to see a real miracle. This is going to be a miracle about peace between these two countries. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you, we condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.